I've been called bossy.
I've been called bitch,
Bossy.
Bitch.
Harpy.
Shrill.
kid,
Whore.
I asked questions about maternity leave as a part of my benefits package offered with a new position.
I was then told they questioned my commitment to the team if I asked questions like that.
I've been passed over for positions I'm more qualified for because
The eventual hire looks more like who the client expects.
I can't remember the last meeting I didn't get talked over in.
My boss kept calling me a little whale in front of clients when I was pregnant.
Make sure you bring a man with you next time you go to his office, just for extra protection.
My female supervisor kept pressuring me for dates. I kept reminding her that I'm gay. She didn't stop. It was like I was a challenge or something.
The site manager would talk about me in his native language to subs, not realizing I could understand him.
He told them we were sleeping together and described me at length.
I've been asked in every interview, but the most recent one, what my husband does.
Which is already offensive, but doubly so because I have a wife.
I had my bottom grabbed at last year's summit. I accosted the man in front of his colleagues, his boss and a colleague.
Neither of whom believed me when I said he had touched me inappropriately.
My superior bought me a pair of stilettos when a huge project completed because he thought I would look nice in them.
Everyone else received an iPad.
A vendor kept staring at my breasts when pitching me on their services. I told him my face was up here.
My boss reprimanded me after saying I had embarrassed the vendor, and now they wouldn't want to work with us.
The design manager and HR manager insisted that there was no issue with the rape jokes and stripper jokes that coordinators were subjected to by senior managers.
Because that's how entertainment is, and they've just never been on site.
I kept saying no to a manager's advances and finally told him I was a lesbian in a happy relationship with my girlfriend.
So then he'd only call me Dyke instead of my name when no one else was around. HR did nothing.
At a recent industry party, a man who I've never spoken to or heard of removed his wedding ring as he came up to me and said,
I'm old enough to be your father, but play your cards right and you can call me daddy later, little girl.
He wouldn't take no for an answer.
He wouldn't take no for an answer.
He wouldn't take no for an answer.
Back to the TEA Summit. My name is Clara Rice, and I'm the Director of Communications at JRA and a member of the TEA International Board.
Hi, I'm Traci Klainer, and I'm the Creative Director for SeaWorld Parks and Entertainment, and I'm the VP of the TEA's International Board.
And I'm Cynthia Sharpe, Principal Cultural Attractions and Research at ThinkWell Group, co-founder of Harriet B's Daughters, and a member of the TEA Eastern Board. Welcome.
As you may have noticed, workplace issues around gender have been a little bit in the news. While Hollywood was the first one to blow the whistle, industries from farming to sports to tech, all are now having to deal with this long-term standing issue.
We actually began developing this session at about this time last year, long before the rise of Me Too and Time's Up. One of the things we heard from well-meaning colleagues in the industry is, that stuff doesn't happen in themed entertainment. We're one big happy family.
As this video clearly showed, it has and it does. But we have the power to change this together, today. Maybe not to heal all the wounds, but to begin applying Band-Aids to the 1,000 little cuts that keep our colleagues, our companies, our industry, and ourselves from reaching their full potential.
Today is not about naming names. It's not even really about sexual harassment. It's about creating safe and equitable workspaces. It's about learning how to make the changes which will allow us to work together better, to create together, to learn together, to grow together, and to reach our full potential.
The reality of gender bias is here. Blinders off.
So let's get started. You will see, hopefully at your places, index cards. We invite you to write down your questions and pass them to the center aisles. They'll be collected, and we're going to use them in the second half of this session. As Christine alluded to in her opening remarks, one of the advantages of today is we can learn from other industries, and that's what we're going to do first. Right now, women's gymnastics in the US is roiled by controversy and scandal. Larry Nassar was exposed as a serial sexual abuser with, as of this morning, over 265 women and girls coming forward to accuse him of sexual abuse. But he was not a lone actor. He was aided and abetted by institutional structures that encouraged a culture of silence, of disempowerment, and those structures then allowed harassment and abuse to flourish. We are incredibly fortunate because she has to hop on a plane and fly to a regional competition to have Valorie Kondos Field, the head coach of the winning UCLA women's gymnastics program. They've won 6 national titles. She's the Pac-12 Coach of the Century. They just won the Pac-12 title, and she runs a program which is a model for how to empower young women and how to create a culture of winning that doesn't come at the cost of people. She's also one of us, the recipient of an IAPA Biggie Award for her work at SeaWorld. Please join me in welcoming Valorie Kondos Field.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Particularly since you have to hop on a plane. So let's get right to it. You are known, as I mentioned, for advocating and creating a really welcoming environment. How do you cultivate that culture of personal responsibility and agency, both in the gym and at SeaWorld?
First of all, thank you so much for having this conversation because it's hugely important. And it's interesting, I think one reason why I am such an advocate for all of this is because I didn't come from the world of athletics. I came from the theater world. I'm a ballet dancer by trade. And I've been coaching at UCLA for 35 years, but this whole culture of athletics, of winning, of medals, is still so foreign to me, even though we've won 6 national championships and Coach of the Century. That makes me sound very old. But honestly, in my world, in our world, when you think about winning and success, for me growing up in the dance world, success was defined as being able to prepare well enough to feel calm and confident as I'm standing in the wings to go on stage. It wasn't about a medal. And that is what I've been able to instill in our student athletes at UCLA. And when I was first asked to be the head coach, I went to the athletic director and then the chancellor of the university, and I said, it's not about bragging rights. You think about it. Athletics is all about bragging rights, from Pee Wee football to the Olympic Games to the NFL. It's all about being able to say, ha ha, we beat you. And in this country, we celebrate our athletes and those bragging rights like they're our royalty. And it's different in other countries than it is in the United States. And so I went to my boss and I said, if it's all about bragging rights, if it is about winning at all cost, I am the wrong person because I don't have that in my DNA. And they said, nope, you're the right person and we want you to help cultivate this healthy environment of athletics. And we've been able to do it. We've been able to do it right. And that's exactly what I do down at SeaWorld, and I also work at the San Diego Zoo. And you know what? It really is a Mr. Rogers type of conversation. It's the Mr. Rogers approach of civility. And as simple as it sounds, one of the first days that I'm working with the cast down at the theme parks is I go up on the grease board before rehearsals start, and I say, we're going to talk about the importance of saying thank you and you're welcome. We're going to talk about civility. We're talking about how to treat people with respect. And I feel so silly, I feel so elementary when I bring this stuff up, but it is hugely important. And it's really fun because the cast members will then go there the whole day getting really obnoxious saying, "You're welcome, Miss Val."
You're welcome.
Right. And, but it starts there. That was a long answer.
That's fine. That's fine. We want the long answers. So it sounds like you had an incredibly supportive system around you at UCLA when you had that conversation. Particularly in the Larry Nassar case, we've seen a change in leadership at USAG, USA Gymnastics, and the USOC, the US Olympic Committee, as a result of that, as a result of the Nassar scandal. And the victim survivors who came forward, many of them very squarely called for accountability in those structures. Those structures themselves, though, weren't engaging in abuse per se, but they formed a culture. What do you see as the connection between the culture these structures sort of support and opening the door to harassment or abuse? What's the problem? What's the connection?
Winning. It's very simple. I was in London at the 2012 Olympic Games. We had 4 athletes from 4 different countries competing there. And I happened to be standing next to the president of the US Gymnastics Association, who's no longer in that position. And I said to him, he was on his phone, and I said, "Why do we in this country allow Marta Karolyi, who's the national team coach, to get away with such abuse? It's not physical, but it's emotional, and it's verbal, and it's hurtful, and it's damaging. Why do we let her get away with such abuse?" And he turned to me, barely, and he said it like I was an idiot. He said, "Because she wins, Val." And he walked away, and I said, "At what cost, Steve?" And that's as complicated as it gets. And when you open a culture, what happened was we invited the Karolyis from Romania in 1984. They had coached Nadia Comaneci in Romania, hugely successful. They had coached Mary Lou Retton, hugely successful. So we go, "You guys take over our program here in the country." I don't blame the Karolyis. They brought their system from an Eastern European country that worked. They were allowed to be abusive in that country because it worked. They didn't have to hide it. What happened was the United States Gymnastics Federation and the USOC, the Olympic Committee, turned a blind eye. They protected the Karolyis. Nobody could get close to them. Nobody. Marta's circle of influence was literally 2 people, 3 people. The president of USA Gymnastics, the vice president that did all her bidding, and Larry Nassar. Those are the only people that got close to Marta Karolyi for 30 years. So when you value winning and medals above your athletes, your most important commodity, when you value those, you open your environment up to corrosiveness. It's inevitable, and it spreads like a disease. And that is the culture that it was this private little contained culture that allowed this man, Larry Nassar, to do his bidding as a pedophile. And guess what? I know Larry Nassar very well. He is kind and gentle and considerate. And a month before all of this came out on 60 Minutes last year, I put on Larry Nassar's Facebook page, "Happy birthday to a true gentleman." It was an amazing environment for a pedophile to do his bidding.
You're here today. You're being remarkably open about the conversations you had with Steve Penny, the former head of USAG, your relationship with Larry Nassar. But one of the most interesting things to me about your openness is how much you cede the stage to your athletes and how much you center their voices as all of this is going on. You have a number of former national team and elite gymnasts who have come through your program or who are currently in your program. Why is it so important for you that you make space for them to own the stage as much as you do?
Because it's my whole, the umbrella of my job. A coach, a definition of a coach is not to win medals or championships. A definition of a coach is to motivate change. The only reason someone needs a coach in their life is to do something that we cannot do on our own. That's why we get nutritionists. That's why we get leadership coaching. That's why we get whatever, right? If you have a personal coach to help you work out, it's because you need someone to help you do that which you can't do on your own. So I coined that definition in my little brain 35 years ago when I started coaching. And I was very, 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 very blessed to have a strong relationship with Coach John Wooden. And it was early on in my coaching career that I was trying to figure out how to manage this world of athletics where it's all about winning. And I came across his book on leadership, and it literally opened. It was like a Hollywood movie. It just went, ha, and opened up to his definition of success. And he had won 10 national championships. Sports Illustrated had voted him the coach of the century, the all-time winningest coach. And his definition of success, as I'm reading it, is success is peace of mind in knowing you've done your best to become the best you're capable of becoming. And I kept reading because it's like, no, success is winning, success is monetary gain, success is a salary, success is the corner office, success is the car you drive, success in LA is living in 90210. No, that's success. And I read it again. Success is peace of mind in knowing you've done your best. And I read it again, and I did it again. And I had the biggest aha moment of my life. Success really is simply peace of mind in knowing you've done your best. To be able to lay my head on the pillow every night and take a little inventory of how I've coached these young athletes and to be able to go, I did a good job today. That's the only pat on the back that I need. Because guess what? We've won 6 national championships. I'm the head coach for 28 years, so we've lost a lot more than we've won. And are all those other years down the drain? No. So, to get back to your question, my job is to help motivate change. My job is to take 18-year-old young women and help them. I have 4 years to help them hone all these amazing skills and characteristics that they have to go out to the real world after that and become strong, confident, competent leaders. That's my job. And the first thing I have to do is help them find their voice and feel confident in speaking their voice to whomever, even someone who is sexually abusing them. And when I saw those, at that point it was 160 women that were in that courtroom, gymnasts, that were looking Larry Nassar in the eye and telling him how what he did to them made them feel, I was so proud of the world of athletics because that's really the nugget of what my business and my profession does. It helps strengthen and hone a confidence to be able to say anything to anyone as long as you're being honest and respectful. And none of them, while some of them got very angry and some of them cried, none of them lost their poise. That's what they learned in the sport of gymnastics. That's why I love what I do. That's why I have the best job in the world.
Some people here might argue about best job in the
Well, but I
world,
do get to go down to SeaWorld now for 6 weeks and choreograph and direct those shows, so that's good.
So how do you lead the SeaWorld team differently, or do you apply exactly the same lessons and skills to the SeaWorld team? It's a broader array of people. It's not necessarily you have 4 years with them. How do you have to change your leadership style with them?
I'm actually more dogmatic with the performers at SeaWorld. The athletes that I get at UCLA, they've been training anywhere from 6 to 8 hours a day for 10 years of their life. They're robots. I need to get them to break out of that. At SeaWorld, I'm usually dealing with really talented kids that haven't had that training yet. So they're ripe. And it's so much fun because I treat them like they're Olympians, like they're going on to the Olympic Games. And I let them get away with nothing, including etiquette in the dressing room, in the green room. And it's like I'm teaching them theater 101, how to act in the dressing room, how to show up, how to be respectful, how to be 100% on every single moment of that rehearsal. If you're not on, then you better be stretching or doing ab work or getting better 100% of the time, because I'm paying you to do that, or SeaWorld's paying you to do that. You do that. And I'm just like on them constantly. And as much as I'm on them about their form, I'm on them about what we call now soft skills, but what I like to refer as life skills, communication skills, listening, all of those things.
Earlier today, we heard Phil Hedema refer to the role of a leader. It's letting their team do their work and essentially protecting them and standing up in front of them. Going back a little bit to USAG and USOC, things were reported. They were reported up the chain, and action wasn't taken. And there were hundreds of women and girls who were abused as a result of that inaction. Setting aside for a moment the legal questions, what's the role of a leader in this new era of accountability? You've spoken about training particularly young employees in terms of etiquette and behavior, and we saw in the video some examples of things that happened in the field, which is analogous to waiting in the wings and in the locker room or the green room. But what's the role of a leader in this new era of accountability?
I really feel that a leader needs to be able to offer a safe space to everyone. And it's kind of weird to me that we have these safe spaces now. Shouldn't every place be a safe space, right? But I was just having a conversation with Chuck, that was a really nice conversation to have. But and I may be simplifying things way too much, but I feel like in the time that we're in right now, there is this shift. And there's a lot of rotten stuff happening with people that are just downright pigs. But there's also stuff that's happening that is simply a product of our environment and how we grew up. You know, I know my grandparents, they still use some words that they shouldn't use in talking about other cultures. And they don't get it. Like, why is that a big deal? In my world of athletics, when you pat someone on the bum, it's a term of endearment. It's not harassment. And yet every coach I know now is like, So I feel that we need to create environments where people can speak up, they can go to HR without having this fear of massive repercussion. And so if I'm a leader of my program and one of my athletes comes up to me and says, you know, my coach, my assistant coach, he was really derogatory the other day, and he was making some jokes that were really offensive to me. I would want that person to have a safe space to come talk to me, to know that she's not going to get reprimanded for it, that I can talk to him openly, and this is the big part, and that he knows that he's not going to get fired over it. So to give people an opportunity to say, I didn't realize I was being that offensive. It happened to me, my first, I think it was the third year as a head coach. I have a really sarcastic sense of humor, and I think I'm really funny. And my athletes called a team meeting. I didn't know what it was about. They sat for 2 hours and talked to me about how hurtful my sarcasm was. I had no idea. And they went on and told example after example after example after example. And as they're telling me this, I'm going, but that's really funny. They did not think so. And they said, one of them said, I'll never forget it. This was like almost 20, 30 years ago. And she said, Miss Val, this is the deal. There's 20 of us on the team. We're student athletes. On any given day, we've got stresses because of papers and finals and midterms, and someone's sick, and someone's got family problems and boyfriend problems. You're never going to get the whole team where we're all feeling great to be able to handle your sarcasm. Since that day, I am so glad they put the mirror up in front of me, because now I have a choice. I can coach from my ego and say, deal with it. I'm the leader of the program. It's my team. Or I can come from a place of being more of an altruistic coach where I care about what they're thinking more than my own ego. And so now I still say the things in my head because I still think they're really funny. I just don't say them out loud.
Legit. One last question before you have to race to the airport.
We're going to go, yeah. First round of national championships. Boom.
Woohoo. Good luck. Yes. We have some youngsters in the industry here today. What are your words of advice to them about self-advocacy and helping from the ground up to build a strong working culture? Because the example of your very young athletes sitting you down and telling you the effect of your words, that's a powerful example. What advice do you have for the TEA Next Geners who are here today? I preach to my athletes that you can say anything to anyone as long as you're being honest and respectful. And the honest part is important, because if you soft pedal something, you're not being respectful. If my athlete soft pedals something to me, it means that I can't handle the truth. That was from a movie. And I know that that's hard, because I know that there are people here. Okay, first of all, I'm going rogue right now. All right. So how many, put your hand up if you have ever been a recipient of something that was said that was offensive. Okay, put your hand down. Put your hand up if you've ever been the one that said it. We all do. Put your hand up if you've done something that was just crossing the line. Okay, we've all done it. But there's this thing out there that started with, the Civil War in Sierra Leone about truth and reconciliation. And just to be, for the young people to be able to say, I know you think that's really funny when I walked past you and you slapped my butt, but please don't do that again, okay? Doesn't mean I hate you, please don't do it again. You start there. And then if it happens again, then you go to HR. Then if it happens again, you have to keep going up the ladder, unfortunately. But I feel like I don't want this younger generation to be so stifled that they have to question every little thing that's said and done. I want them to come forward with enthusiasm and exuberance and confidence, and to be able to say truthfully and respectfully how they feel. And I feel like if we can just kind of like wipe the slate a little clean and just realize, those of us that are 60 and over, that if we can realize what we got away with 30 years ago, we can't get away with now, and go, oops, sorry, it won't happen again. This truth and reconciliation thing actually helped end the Civil War in Sierra Leone. I think it would be a good place to start. Valorie, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. One last thing. You have a book coming out in October. I do. Title?
The title is Life is Short, Don't Wait to Dance. And I have to tell you why. Coach Wooden was like a father to me. And he lived to be 3 months shy of 100. And his wife died about 40 years before he passed, 30 years. And anyone that ever asked Coach, do you have any regrets in your life? Because he literally was like Mother Teresa. He was a saint. He's lived an impeccable life. When he was asked, do you have any regrets? He said, my wife Nellie loved to dance. And I was so shy and I was so concerned about what people would think about me because I'm not a good dancer. I never danced with her. If I had it to do all over again, I would dance with my wife. So, life is short. Don't wait to dance. Thank you.
Thank you. You're good.
Thank you, Ms. Val. We're now going to move to the panel part of our session. I'll introduce the speakers. Kathy Dixon, with a former TEA Next Gen and show set designer for American Scenic. Kaywin Feldman, the Niven Duncan Macmillan Director and President of the Minneapolis Institute of Art and a past president of the Association of Art Museum Directors and the American Alliance of Museums. Wendy Heimann-Nunes, the founder and managing director of Heimann-Nunes and the Pro Bono Council for TEA. Bryan Hinckley, the president of Electrosonic USA and a former secretary of the Western Division Board of the TEA. Zoe Shelmerdine, owner of Garmondale UK and a member of the EME board, Europe Middle East board. And Jill Wu, president of Yowex Entertainment Integration Limited and on the Asia Pacific board of the TEA. And Winnie Chafee will be providing translation for her. And success to me is being able to get into this chair as a short person. Okay, great. Kaywin, we're going to start with you. You gave a very inspiring talk and a subsequent article about your history with the word gravitas. And so I'd like you to talk about that a little bit and kind of unpack what that word means to you.
Sure, thank you. So I actually want to start with a quote from Sheryl Sandberg, who said, "In the future, there will be no female leaders, there will just be leaders." And I can tell you that's not going to happen in my lifetime. If you look today at Fortune 500 CEOs, there are only 32 women running Fortune 500 companies, and everyone's really excited because the number increased by 50% over the year before. That's just 6.4% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women. And only 2 are women of color. One's a Latina, and the other woman is from Southeast Asia. So there's no black woman running a Fortune 500 company at the moment. In Congress, just 20% of the people who represent us are women. In the field of museums, the numbers are better, and I think it sort of reflects the way that the profession is valued. But among almost 50% of museum directors from the Association of Art Museum Directors are female, although there are only 2 women at among the 35 largest museums in America. So if you take that as the equivalent of the Fortune 500, the percentages are still quite similar. And so what I'm really interested in looking at and talking about is how we think about leadership, how we envision it, how we define it. And I think we always envision it as male. A recent article in the New York Times talked about a study that was conducted asking lots and lots of people to draw a picture of a leader. And almost entirely, the entire group drew a picture of a man. The few that didn't draw a picture of a man, if it was gender neutral, when they talked about it, they referred to he when they described the leadership. And in my own personal career, as I have interviewed for jobs, and I think both jobs that I've gotten as well as those I haven't, I always hear the same comment from boards where the headhunter will say, "They thought you didn't have enough gravitas." And I've really looked into the word gravitas. It was one of the original Roman virtues. And in our culture, gravitas is code word for male. You almost never hear a woman described as having gravitas. Gravitas stands for strength, solemnity, intelligence, sort of somber. And even if you look up in the dictionaries, a definition of gravitas will say, the man entered the room and demonstrated great gravitas. And they'll say, the female actor didn't get the job because she didn't have gravitas. So we never associate women with gravitas. I'm not saying they don't have it. It's that our culture defines it almost exclusively as male. And so the thinking goes, only men have gravitas. Women don't have gravitas. You must have gravitas to be a leader, therefore women can't be leaders. And so it's part of this sort of implicit bias we have in determining leaders. And I have to say, it's across the board. Men are no worse at this thinking than women are. We all share it together. And so my sort of cry is for us over time to do a better job of really defining and thinking about leadership. And it's not going to happen until we have more female leaders.
Zoe, as a leader, as an owner of an engineering company, you have said that you needed to know your brief, to know your product, and in a typically man's world, so to speak, to know it better than a man. And can you elaborate on that?
My reference to that at the time was way back in the early 90s. I, as a young person that knew everything and was going to go out there and forge away in the world, decided to go into the construction industry, which traditionally has always been a male-orientated environment. I was successful in achieving a role for a city-listed company that had no females out there working on the road. And I basically was selling to men in a capacity of not just selling to them, but advising them, working measurements out, working specifications out, and educating them actually on what they needed with their product. And anyone that's worked in construction knows how many things can go wrong with concrete, just as a shy example there. So I put myself right out there, not only with my male colleagues and my seniors that had taken a risk. Was I their token gesture of a female? I don't know. To this day, I don't know. What I did know was that I had to know my product, I had to gain respect, and I had to be able to stand there and hold my own. And that was where I found that I paved the way.
Has that changed at all, being the owner of a company versus working at a company? Do you feel like as the owner you have that position of authority and don't need to do that as much anymore?
You mean I have the position, they have no choice? Yeah, there's that one. In particular now, our board is made up of 3 of us. There are 2 males, there is myself as a female. What I know now is that I don't have to know it better than they know it. I don't have to know what isn't mine to know. Within our team, I bring something completely different to the table. I bring a different objective, I bring a different attitude, and I bring a different slant on the same situation. I have no problem taking my hat off and saying, do you know what? I can't answer that question. I need one of our technical team. I will also add, on our technical team, we have female designers. So that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to hand sideways to a male colleague. But that is how we're getting successful. It is about our team, and it's about everything different that our team brings. I think the females on that team make that different.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to switch gears a little bit. We got an amen in the audience. Miss Val talked a lot about mentorship and allyship in her conversation. And Kathy, as kind of the freshest member, shall I say, of the group, the one that's closest to being out of school and kind of the early stage of your career, what has that been like for you? Has it been competitive with other women of your experience? Have you had strong female mentors? Have you had strong male mentors? Talk about what your experience has been in the industry so far.
So I feel as though very early on there was that competition, but as you're coming fresh out of school, I feel like no matter what industry you're in, there is a bit more. But even now, where I'm standing at now, it's less competition amongst us females, and it's more about helping one another, because we're going to end up working with one another. In terms of my mentors that I've been lucky enough to have a number of female mentors, but coming from places that were generally male-dominated, I have had a lot of male mentors as well. When I was in university, my mentor was a man by the name of Richard Harris. And I went into themed entertainment. Well, I went into engineering knowing that I wanted to go in themed entertainment. And most of my profs, when I told them that, they were like, oh, good luck with that, that's really cute. And he was like, okay, let's make this happen. And from then on, I've had a lot of really awesome bosses who would put me in the room with strong female leads in the company so that I may learn from them. They would try and foster a sense of confidence in what it was that I was doing, because I knew what I was doing, and it was just having that extra oomph. And as minute as it may sound, it was also charging you to sit at the table. And by that, I mean, early on, I didn't want to sit at the conference table when I was invited as an intern to any of those meetings, because I didn't feel like I belonged. And there's something very significant about that, right? So I felt like, since I was new blood, I was the only female there in a room of seasoned professionals, and I didn't know if I was allowed to be a part of that conversation. But the thing was, I did deserve to be there, and I was invited there, and I should be there with everyone else. And so I feel as though forcing me to sit at the table was trying to close that divide amongst us. So that's something even today I carry with myself.
And you said now you have your, what do you call them, your boss babe?
Yes, I have my boss babe tribe. I call all of my friends that, and if any of us end up in a bind or encouraging one another, like prior to this, as nervous as I was, I probably had like 16 text messages from my friends saying like, "You've got this, it's great." Awesome. And yeah, so I have my boss babe tribe.
That's great. Bryan.
Hi.
Yeah. I'm sure you feel like you probably have a little bit of a target on your back at this point, but we actually really wanted you on this panel because we feel like what you're doing at Electrosonic is a great example of what to do. And can you talk about your hiring process and how it differs for male, female, and even LGBTQIA? Can you talk about your processes?
Yes, I think the big thing is there is no difference.
Amen.
Right. First off, I'd like to thank you for inviting me to be on this panel and recognizing what Electrosonic is doing in the industry and what we've done with our culture to create an environment that's open and inclusive of all types of people and races and sexualities. I looked at some numbers. We doubled the number of women that are part of Electrosonic over the last 10 years. It's still not good enough. It still only represents about 20% of our workforce. But what I'm really excited about is that a lot of these women are taking on roles that have been traditionally male, right? We have engineers, commissioning, programmers, software engineers, things like that typically haven't really been done by women. And it's so inspiring and exciting that we have a lot of talent of all ages coming, being part of our team and representing who Electrosonic is and what we do. And I also am excited we have a variety of women and LGBT people in all levels of our organization. We have Michelle Fajeda, who's been with us over a year in the role of Vice President of Sales on my executive team. We have my colleague in the UK, Sarah Joyce, who runs our UK business, is obviously a woman, is Sarah. So I think, thinking about it a little bit, a couple things that really has changed or influenced who we are and how we've changed is, first of all, Electrosonic has a long history of working internationally in a number of different cultures, and I think part of that is also knowing that we have to work together in different situations. I think the other thing, the bigger thing, is recognition or recognizing that our people and our team are our greatest asset. And regardless of who they are, what they are, as long as that they can come and do a great job and represent Electrosonic and take care of our customers and help them create incredible experiences, those are the type of people that we're looking for. And it's I'm really proud to lead a group of individuals that come from a lot of different backgrounds and differences and come together to help create these memorable experiences.
So once they come to you, what is kind of the path to leadership? How do you nurture them through the ranks?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say that's the glass ceiling question in some ways.
Yeah.
You know, it's really, we have a great starter apprentice program where we bring young people in that are interested, that have a lot of passion, that get training within all the disciplines of Electrosonic, from accounting and purchasing to wiring racks and doing drawings and going out on site and actually doing some work on construction sites and things like that. We just have a spirit of, if you're willing to step up and do something more, and I think I'm a testament to that, being with the company for 18 years and starting as an entry-level engineer. If you're willing to take on some more and willing to do a good job and do your best, somebody was talking about that earlier, is that it's what it's all about. Do your best, and we'll ask you to do more and try new things and not be afraid of risk.
And it doesn't matter who you are or where you come from, just as long as you do the work. That's great.
And all right, there's no excuses.
Exactly. So Jill, similarly, how are gender issues in the workplace handled in Asia and China, particularly as regards hiring?
OK， 在中国大陆雇佣人他有一个两性平权法来保护女性，那么这个保护是保护得非常周到的。
In China and a few other countries in Asia, they have very strict rules. It's called and the law of protection of women's rights and interests. It's really strictly enforced in every company. And there's no discrimination towards gender, racial, religious, and so that's strictly enforced in quite a few Asian countries.
And is that just for hiring, or is that also for becoming a leader or wages?
顾问的时候，在雇佣的时候呢，这个女性是得到机会是很大的。可是进了一家公司，她在成长的时候就会碰到很多的阻碍。
The law can only enforce the hiring procedure, so there cannot be any discrimination towards people with different genders. However, once the person gets into the company regarding the promotion, salary increase, that's where the discrimination shows.
Great. Before I ask Wendy a question, this is your last call for turning in your index cards with your questions. Wendy, similar to Jill, you run your own business, and we had a great conversation on the phone about how you feel that the culture is different at a women-owned business, and how your clients have mentioned and your colleagues have mentioned to you that the culture is different. Can you talk about why that is, how it is, and why it is?
Sure. So I want to tell just a quick story of how we became a women-owned firm, because it really relates to, I think, sexism engendered in certain industries. I had a former partner who we were growing, and we met my current partner, but my former partner was concerned because she had 2 small children, and he thought that she wouldn't be as focused. In my trying to communicate with him why I thought she would be an awesome asset to the firm. In trying to get him on the phone, I couldn't find him on the phone. Lo and behold, I find out later he's running around, let's just call it maladaptive coping mechanisms that he was dealing with. And so, you know, the irony that there's a gentleman who's concerned that a female attorney is not going to be focused because she has 2 little kids. In the meantime, he had his own lack of focus. It really speaks to just, you know, implicit sexism in these decisions. When my partner and I started the firm, we now have a third equity partner who's a male. We call him our yes dear partner. But anyhow, that's probably a little sexist myself. But actually, my sexism gets to the heart of what I wanted to say. When Michonne and I started our firm, we didn't plan on having a woman-owned firm. What we planned to have was a firm that was true to ourselves, because we had gotten to a stage in our lives where we decided life was too short. We had too much confidence in our abilities to say that we needed to be something we weren't, and we were going to start a firm and run a firm that was consistent with who we are. And after you and I had our conversation, I thought about the culture that we're imbuing throughout the firm. And I have to say, I don't know that it's necessarily a female culture as much as a it's okay to be you culture. And I think that really, that's really what is making our firm, dare I say, attract other people and be successful, because we recognize that where you are your most powerful, where you can apply your greatest energy and resource and your true talent is when you don't have to work through apologizing in various ways for who you are. You can distill your power because you don't have to put up with the nonsense of being something you're not. And that manifests in so many different ways. If you have a sick child, no problem, be with your child. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. We know a parent is a parent. If you're having, an issue, if you need certain time off, communicating, being upfront with one another, being, as Ms. Val said, being authentic, being honest with one another, with our clients, not putting up with nonsense, both with each other and also with our clients. I mean, we have fired clients because we feel that they're not respectful to us and to people they're doing business with. And so after our conversation, I really thought about it. I don't know necessarily that running a women-owned firm has made us more female, other than the fact that we do obsess a little bit about our decor. But other than that, I think really what the spirit throughout our firm is that you're human, and as a human, whatever you are, gay, straight, male, female, black, white, whatever it is, you have needs and you have strengths and weaknesses, and you are okay being you. And we want you to be you. And if you can't succeed being you with us, then we're not the right environment for you. And we tell our clients that the same. You're at your most powerful when you are true to yourself. So, is that a female quality? I don't think so. I think it's just who we are.
But we did talk a lot in our conversation as well about, in the early stages of your career, you were not allowed to be yourself.
Well, exactly. I became a sole practitioner initially. As much as I loved working where I was working, I think I knew deeply that I could not break certain barriers being true to myself for whatever reason. And so I realized I didn't want to make those sacrifices. I believed in myself, and so I said I was going to do it for myself. And I think that the best gift that companies, organizations can give to themselves is to let people be who they are and respect them for it and make accommodations for it. Because it will be paid back in spades. I think the old paradigm of needing to be in the office for FaceTime, 9 to 7 or 9 to 6, whatever, not allowing that flex time, not leading with compassion, making people feel special, things like that. I think we're learning those are the keys to success as opposed to being distractions. So I think that in general, business environments are changing in general. And then maybe later I'll speak a little bit about the advice we give our clients and our interaction with our clients and how that may be different because we're women-owned.
Great.
So I say it's okay for you to be you, and if you're working for people that don't recognize it, know that you have the power to find some place that will allow you to be you, and you will be infinitely more successful in the process. So,
Thank you. I'm going to give the moderating mic to Traci Klainer, who's got some questions from our audience and some subject matter experts.
Yes, well, thanks, Clara, so much, and thank you to this amazing panel. I know that people are getting so much out of hearing you speak. And thank you guys for getting your questions together, and we're putting those together now. And but as we started developing this session, we reached out to a few experts and for some guidance on what we thought we should ask the panel. So I'm going to call on some of them while we're organizing your questions, and then we'll dive into yours. So Lisa Passamonte Green, you are first. I don't know where you're sitting. There you are.
这个问题非常的好。那么，因为我在台北、在北京、在上海都有自己的办公室，有看到3个地方有不同点。
She said, this is a great question. She has an office in Taipei, in Shanghai, and in Beijing, so she sees a lot of differences among those 3 locations.
他们共同点有一个部分，也就是说，现在3个地方的女性领导人或者女性重要的工作人员，都没有一个人是冠夫姓的，全部都是用自己的本姓。
Actually, she wants to bring in something very interesting situation. And all those 3 places, in terms of gender bias, most of the women, regardless of working in the company or outside the company, in those 3 locations, women, they don't carry their husband's last name.
这就代表说，亚洲的女性，她的这个女性的意识、自主权已经变得非常高了。
So this shows the Asian woman's self-consciousness is getting higher and higher.
但是北京跟上海跟台北又有一点点不一样的地方。
But Beijing, Shanghai, and Taipei, there are still some slightly difference in terms of this awareness.
在北京呢，这个会议上永远你不会知道他们真正的想法，所有的想法女性都必须要在事后。一种 social 的场合才会知道真正的想法。
In Beijing, a lot of gathering, the conference, you won't really know what your clients really think, and you always have to find out after the meeting in a very social environment.
那么在上海是比较直接会告诉你，它速度比较快，会很直接告诉你他们的这个想法，所以女性存在着是一个困难度比较少。
In Shanghai, people, their personalities overall is very straightforward. So a lot, oftentimes they just tell you exactly what they think.
那在台北呢，女性可能比男性还要凶一点，所以男性可能是会讲的最多的一个他们的想法，所以在台北是比较没有女性领导人的困难。
In Taipei, that situation is also different because woman seems become, she doesn't want to use the word bossy, but very, very demanding and talk in a very superior way. So the woman seldom face problem like a gender bias.
OK， 但是那个你的 team 在对女性的领导人，在3个地方呢是面对的问题正好反过来。在北京，他会最听你的话，你的 team lead 这个 team 会听你的话。上海呢会跟你讨论，台湾呢可能都有他们自己的想法，正好反过来。
However, the team working underneath a female supervisor, the attitude actually is reversed. In Beijing, 在北京的话，他会比较。
这个会听你的话。
In Beijing, your team, they would listen to their female leader pretty honestly, and with Shanghai, because it's the straightforward style, so your team and team will discuss issues with you instead of just following, be obedient like Beijing people. But Shanghai is they straightforward and bring up their questions. 台北就是他会跟你争论，可能比老板还大。 But in Taipei, the team members they argue with the boss, and they have lots of opinions, and they want to state every single one of opinion, and they argue with the female leader constantly. So
thank you. Oh, sorry. Thank you very much. The next question comes from John Lynn, who I see standing right there.
The last guy who needs a mic. Hey, Bryan. Appreciate you being the token guy up there. Hey, known you for a long time. Congratulations on what you're doing. I think that's a reflection of the type of individual you are, what you bring to the industry, what you've brought to your company. Being one of the good guys, do you find yourself in a defensive position often or ever having to defend yourself or defend your gender?
No, I don't, just because of my openness and willingness to, invite and have great people working together. Look, I'm not perfect. I really liked what Coach Val did, Miss Val did, and we all raised our hands in the rooms that we haven't been perfect, and we all have rooms, area to improve. And I think that's true with, myself personally, as well as Electrosonic as a company. There's always room to improve, but I think we're in the right trajectory and going in the right directions. And I just try. I'm also a believer of a saying from Dr. Conti. One of his favorites is, "The fish stinks from the head down." So I think really one of the reasons that I was willing to get up here today is to be leaders, and we are the leaders of the industry. And I challenge myself, and I challenge everybody in this room to be a good guy, to do the right thing, and really come with an open mind and inclusion, and not allow the abuses and inappropriate behaviors to take place in our industry, in our workplace, in our lives. So of today, that's what I ask everybody in this room and challenge you to do that.
We're going to take one more question from one of our experts, and then we'll get to yours. Dan Picard. I don't know where you are. Oh, there you are, Dan.
My question is for Kathy. I am curious, as a woman of color, how do your experiences differ?
My experiences differ. So I feel as though, in general, I am the minority. I do stand out a whole lot. But initially, in general, I don't experience any sort of racism in the sense that when I'm going in for an interview, going in for being hired for something, that I'm treated any differently. But then again, racism is not one of those things that's going to be in your face. So that's the best way of being able to describe it. But I feel as though the biggest difference comes in being young talent. A lot of times it's getting your first, your job out of college or in a new industry. So I feel as though it's not really about my race, it's more about my age.
Thank you. So I think we're gonna...
So we lickety-split went through the submitted questions. Thank you to everyone who submitted one. And we looked for those questions that kept coming up. And a big category that I throw over to our esteemed panel: when your company does not have HR, or when the leadership of your company doesn't see that there are any issues to address, how would you suggest educating upward to get them to act on inequality issues? Sure. When your company doesn't have HR, or if the leadership at your company doesn't see that there are any issues to address, how do you educate or manage upward to get them to act on inequality issues?
How do you tell your boss that there's something going on and HR ain't listening?
So just one thing is you have to speak out. So whether that's asking for meetings, maybe getting a couple of employees together to have those discussions, and maybe it's getting a reading group, passing some articles around, passing those articles on to leadership for discussions, and if none of that works, get a lawyer.
So this is somewhat related, but I recently discovered something in my practice that I thought was really wild, kind of mind-blowing from a legal perspective. I'm not quite sure how it's going to go down when I actually try to do this in a transaction, but because of this whole Me Too movement, there's a lot of discussion, and we live in a gig economy, there's a lot of discussion about, well, if you're not employed, if you're actually a vendor, if you're a creative provider, and your life is reliant upon selling your services, what do you do to protect yourself from harassment? And how do you protect people that work for you from being harassed by your clients? Who do you go to? And the suggestion was made, have contractual provisions with your clients that say that a cause for termination or a cause for suspension with getting your fee is if you are exposed to a hostile work environment. Now, I don't know how that's going to go down when I actually try to do this on behalf of my clients, but I thought that was really fascinating because the whole point of contractual negotiations is to protect your best interests, right? And I don't think it's ever occurred to me as a woman that part of protecting a client's best interest as another woman, or whatever classification they may fall in, is making sure that they're protected from their clients and their clients' environment, and how you can actually embed that in your actual business transaction and have teeth to it. I thought that was really interesting, and I suspect we're going to see more of that when it comes to representing creative service providers.
So we'll let you be the guinea pig and let us know how it turns out.
Yeah. I have many clients that I'm going to do that for. We'll see how it goes.
So that's actually a really great segue, because we also got several questions about how many people are willing to walk away from a client or project and lose fees to stand up for their staff being harassed or treated poorly. Raise your hand if you've done it. Is that a big enough percentage in this room?
Nope. Oh, sorry.
You can answer. Has anybody in this room done something along the lines of what Wendy has suggested in the contracting process? Do you protect your team legally in the contract with a client? Has anybody done it? Okay, so please report back. Oh, how'd it go? Did somebody raise their hand?
Yep. Gentleman right there.
Woo!
You are absolutely allowed to legally put that in a contract. And it's actually a very good thing. It's actually going to take a lot of people to actually quite understand that that's how it works. But you are absolutely allowed to put that into a contract to protect your best interest.
Can I piggyback on that? Has anybody, how about vendors? Has anybody put that in a contract with a vendor, or not hired a vendor again because of inappropriate behavior towards you? Okay, now the hands are going up.
Hey, it's Trent Oliver. I would say most MSAs, and we all have lots of them, have this language in it. But the thing is, the people you're working with in a large corporation have no clue what's in the MSA, and they don't care. So they're going to they behave however they behave. And if you raise issues, they won't hire you again. But, you know, you really, I mean, we've fired clients because when we're going to lose good people because of bad clients, we're going to lose good clients. So we get rid of the bad clients to keep our good people. But I love that idea of like making it maybe into the work order, not just the contract and the MSA, but the work order that this is the behavior.
Please report back next year, Wendy, on this grand
Yes.
experiment. Love to know.
I think, if I could just say, I think it requires bravery on the industry's part. I think that what we saw in Hollywood in general is it took some brave people to break through, but once they broke through, it's now becoming, dare I say, industry standard. And I think one of the great things that the TEA could do collectively is just collectively agree that we're going to start asserting this. And you know, I don't want to sound like Norma Ray, but let's do this together. There's strength in numbers, and then it becomes part of the zeitgeist of the way we expect to be treated by our clients, and vice versa.
Amen.
Can I
Christine.
add one more thing? Sure. So I live in Toronto, Canada, and there actually is legislation in the province of Ontario that came into effect in 2010 that is it's workplace violence and harassment. It applies to hostile work environment. Most recently, at the end of 2017, new clauses in that legislation address sexual harassment, like brought more focus on sexual harassment. So I wouldn't say that we're any further ahead. I would just say that it's interesting that, in fact, in this province, and I can't even speak for the rest of Canada, but it's actually part of the employment standards that provide a mechanism for defining it, reporting it, and taking action against it. So that kind of thing is also something to watch as well when it is, in fact, legislated.
So building on that a little bit, one of the other questions that we got from several people relates to, in the absence of legal or federal pressure or regional pressure, how can companies change their culture without necessarily just wholesale changing their people? Ms. Val alluded to, you know, we've all offended and we've all been offended. Doesn't mean we're all bad and we need to get tossed out. How do you change the culture without just changing over everyone? Some of you have spoken to that a little bit. I know that the Minneapolis Institute of Art has done some pretty significant culture change. Can you speak to that a little?
Yeah, so I think it has to start with defining the culture. And we spent a lot of time at the museum talking among the leadership group, talking across different divisions of the staff, and really trying to define what our culture is and what it is that we value, what kind of workplace we want to have. And we came up with about 5 or 6 elements of things like agility, driving results, generosity, and now we actually hire for them. So we have a series of questions that try to get at that kind of behavior. And when interviewing curators, for example, we say that accessibility is the #1 value we care the most about, so we don't hire snobs. So if you want to work in a place that values elitism, just don't come here. It makes it easier on both of us. So we hire for culture and then do everything we can to maintain the culture. We enforce it, have conversations about it. We kick the tires on it. Every now and then someone will say, you know, I'm not sure this quite expresses what we want to do. And it's been a really cohesive part of the organization.
Can I add to that? So one of the things I think that's really important in terms of culture is that you can't just say it, you have to do it. And I think sometimes people get very frustrated. We see it time and again where we'll be reviewing employee handbooks and whatnot, and there's mission statements and all this nice language, and then on the front line, it's not enforced. Or apologies are made for someone because they're a high performer and they're given more latitude. And all it takes is that occurring once, and you've completely decimated your credibility in terms of your corporate culture. So I think one of the things that's so critical for culture is being willing to make those hard choices all the time and walking the walk.
So we're going to take one more question from one of our experts that also came up with your questions. So Sarah, I don't know where you're, Sarah Cole. Yay, okay.
Hi, so this is for Kaywin. We've talked a lot today about men and women and thinking about my own team, and especially with a lot of people coming into our workplace who don't identify as either male or female, who are bigendered or just fall differently on the gender spectrum. How do they fit into this conversation?
Thank you for the question. I have to say, you've hit me where it hurts. I have so many amazing young people who work at our museum who give me hell constantly, and I love them for it. And they've really helped me realize of late that I have a Gloria Steinem feminism, that my feminism comes out of sort of the 1970s when it was all about raising up middle-class white women. And they've helped me to understand another world out there. And we focus very much at MIA on intersectionality, which is a term really coming out of Black feminism, and this understanding that people are never just one thing, and that mainstream feminism often forgets the experience of women of color, women with disabilities, LGBTQ women, and that we've done as much damage by focusing just on this kind of singular, sorry to keep throwing Gloria Steinem under the bus, but Gloria Steinem feminism. And it's really opened my eyes and helped me to see my own biases. And so we've talked a lot about that at the museum. We've started something that we call Mass Action, Museums as Sites for Social Action. And with Mass Action have brought together incredible practitioners, thinkers across the museum field who are really pushing the boundaries in their own museums to try to aggregate that knowledge and information to help across the institution so that we can all do a better job at it.
Great. So we're going to bring things full circle, wrap things up. Part of the title of this session is What's Next? So in 1 to 2 sentences, which is going to be very hard, I'm sure, tell me what is next. What I talked about earlier about how it's not about healing the big wounds today. It's about starting today, the low-hanging fruit, putting Band-Aids on those little cuts. What is one thing we can do today, starting today, to turn the tide?
Start. In general, listen. It could be a small bit of constructive criticism, but don't just brush it off as in, well, that's really minor, but it's all the small things that start adding up.
So I say no Band-Aids, triage. In the elections 2018, 2020, vote for women, put women in office.
So again, I hate to seem like a radical, but I don't see this as a male-female thing. I think that what is happening, women are leading the charge, but I think that everyone benefits when we show that sticking up for who you are, protecting yourself, is a good thing. It protects everyone. It's good for men, women, everyone across the board. And so what I would say is, try to really recognize your ability to protect yourself. Embrace your value, respect yourself, and demand that in all aspects of your life. And once you start doing that, you will set the tone for everyone around you, and that will lift all tides. And if you need assistance to do that because you are afraid or you have insecurities, whatever, find someone that can help you. Because I think if each of us wakes up to the power of no, it will be profound across the board.
I would say is make culture a priority in your business and make that culture include inclusivity openness, and diversity, and make that a priority. Be a leader, live the life of a leader, and walk the talk.
I think we have to all be really honest, look inwards, and admit if you feel there is a gender diversity with it or a gender bias within yourself, within your company. Then be prepared to be educated and be prepared to move onwards and press for progress.
在亚洲，女性本来就是要2份工作，一个是家庭，一个是公司。但是亚洲的女性一向都是很坚强的，所以呢，继续付出，你就会成功。
She said, female role in Asian culture, the female always have 2 roles. One's for your family, one's for your career. If you keep on working hard and continue work hard, that's very Asian mentality that will get you where you want to be.
因为现在的机会越来越多，所以呢，你要愿意付出更多的时间，你的成功也就会更大。
She's trying to say because right now there are so many theme park opportunities in China right now. So it's for men and women, and the opportunities are for talented people, regardless your gender. So working hard.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us for the Blinders Off. I know there's a lot to digest, and I hope we have provoked thoughts and inspired change. Ms. Val talked about an aha moment that she had, so I have a story with Mr. Steve Burkett that we're going to tell for a minute, because I think it was an aha moment for Steve. Oh, yes, can I grab? Thanks, Jill.
Thank you, Traci. Real quick, this isn't a very flattering story, but it's apropos. So I attended a industry conference some time ago, and Traci was one of the presenters. She told a story from the stage where she related where she had been in a meeting with industry colleagues, female and male. It happened, the meeting happened to be chaired by a male. At some point in the meeting, Traci went to interject, went to speak in the meeting, at which point the male chair said,
"He shushed me."
And I thought, well, how come that doesn't happen today? What's going on? That's crazy. And so she went on with the story that at some point during that meeting, she went to excuse herself and say she was going to leave, at which point the male chair said,
"We're not done yet. You can't leave." And I said, "Well, I was shushed. I guess my opinion isn't important. Who else was shushed in this room?" Because it was me and one other woman and several men.
So I was really kind of stunned by that story as I'm sitting in the audience listening to this. And so the conference was over. Traci was leaving. I happened to be sitting in the back at a table. Clara happened to be there. And so Traci is walking by, and I look up to Traci. I said, "Traci, so what became of that? What happened after that?" At which point Traci said,
I said, "Steve, you were there."
So that was a real sock in the stomach, because not only was I part of the problem, that I didn't say, hey, I wanted to hear what Traci had to say. I didn't speak up. But it was unremarkable enough that I didn't even remember it. And so I go around thinking that, you know, I see things for what they are, and I have daughters, and I get this, but I don't.
Well, we wanted to tell this story because if any of you know Steve Burkett, he's one of the most incredible men. I mean, truly a gentleman. And he has 3 daughters, and he wants to raise them as strong people to be able to work in our society. And that Steve and I and Clara had that moment, it was like an aha moment to me, because Steve would never think something was bad, or, you know, like, you would never let something happen. And that it was an aha moment for you. For Clara and I, we went, oh my God, you know, this is going on and people aren't understanding. So that's why we wanted to tell the story. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
We hope you've had a number of aha moments over the past 90 minutes. We hope you'll continue to have them. And we hope that going forward, you've got a charge going forward. You have ideas of things that you can implement. And in that spirit, we're going to bring it full circle. to the video that we started with. In addition to asking our colleagues to share with us the biases they'd encountered, we also asked them to share stories of positive transformation. Let's take a look at what happens when the blinders finally come off.
I was the only woman in the pilot class of my company's Young Leaders program. I learned from that experience that a lot of the non-exec guys I work with want to see more women in our ranks and are eager to know what they can do to help create an environment that's more inclusive.
I've actively refused to go to places like Hooters or Tilted Kilt for team meetings and bonding.
We worked to create gender-balanced teams.
Develop your own personal zingers in response to the bullies, the obnoxious, the intolerant. So, okay. All you guys sitting around this table want coffee and are looking at me? Is that because I'm the only one with boobs? I'm your producer. I'll have mine with 1 sugar, please. Several men in our Young Leaders program took the suggestion to read Feminist Fight Club.
My company understood that as a breastfeeding mom, I needed privacy, so they gave me the only office with a door and a solid wall.
We created internal mentorship programs between entry-level and senior-level employees to create a culture of learning and promotion from within.
I encourage input from absolutely everyone. All ideas are important, and I refuse to shoot someone down, especially when they are trying to help.
I told a senior male executive how I needed him to model not interrupting or overspeaking and how to amplify other voices in meetings. And he did it. It's had a huge positive effect.
I make an effort to surface the resumes of women and people of color when there are hiring opportunities.
I realized I needed to stop waiting for women and other marginalized groups to tell me what they needed and make our office a place where they're respected and welcomed. It's on me.
Thank you.
Mike?
So, welcome to Elephants 2018. We'll have more this afternoon, but I wanted to take a moment really to acknowledge these 4 fierce females who put this together. We're missing one. Nikki, where are you? Please come here. Cynthia, Traci, Clara, Nicola Rossini. The convergence, the very harmonic convergence between the passion of these 4 and their compatriots and elephants has been quite the process. Steve and I were sort of the beta testers through the process on asking cumbersome, clumsy questions. Can I do this? Can I say that? This has been, I hope you have gained from this what we have all gained from this. I think we've learned with every meeting. This is a powerful moment, I think, in the history of TEA, and very well timed, spectacularly executed. Thank you to the panel. Thank you to the folks in front, the powerful 4. And if you have a question you didn't feel comfortable asking, we've had several. We've asked them. We're still here. And so as you circulate through the rest of this weekend, they're not going to hurt you. These women are so intelligent and so gentle and so compassionate. It's all about where do we go from here. So ask your questions, anything you're uncomfortable with. Anyway, just follow up because this is, I think, a great moment. Very well done. Thank you very much. Let's go have lunch. And thank you.
Please.